Hey, everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight once again on our PIC TV Network News. Thank you for all of the people watching us around the world, especially our audiences in Brazil, France, Argentina, Nicaragua, United Kingdom, Colombia, Mexico, Guatemala, United Kingdom, Germany, Panama, Ireland, Peru, Chile, Canada, and the rest of the world. You're watching our PIC TV Network News segment, part 2, and we are talking about AI. So you can tell your neighbor, tell your friend to tune in. We're so happy tonight to have our special audience with us from around the world. We have Principal Jefferson. He is from Baltimore, Maryland. Can you send a wave out to everybody? We have Walter Taylor, all the way from South Carolina. He's working with our PIC TV Network management team. We have Patricia on. She represents the whole world in the Spanish community. Hey, Patricia. We have our very own, the great, the awesome Michelle Cox from down in Atlanta. She's going to be presenting tonight also. We're so happy to have also a special guest on tonight. William is with us, and he's going to be talking about AI, a hot topic tonight, kicking us off. And Melody, she is in our virtual audience. So we thank you, those who are watching us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Marco Polo, even Clubhouse, and Alexa. We have a brand new way of zooming the audio in on Alexa. And we thank you for tuning in to our news segment. Well, let's go get into it right now. Our subject tonight is AI. I'm going to ask Principal Jefferson, you have a special guest that you brought on to help us in our first segment before we have Michelle Cox. Come on.
Yeah, so I brought my department chair of my STEM program at North County High School in Glen Burnie, Maryland. He is definitely an expert with computer science, with AI, and artificial augmented reality. He's traveled the world doing conferences and talking about these things. So I want to introduce Mr. William Forrester tonight on the PIC TV News Network that is shown all across the world tonight. So Bill, if you could just talk a little bit about what is AI from a simplistic definition, and what is it used for?
Sure. Definitely glad to be here. Thank you for having me. And I'm excited to have this conversation, because I think what we're trying to do is really scale down the conversation to have younger minds, younger students, K through 12, really start to become, and who my kid in pre-K through 12, let's have all the kids, really start to get an understanding of how these kind of machines that we humans are creating operate in a lot of ways to better, I think, our experience and our existence. And hopefully that's what we're trying to do at North County, a microcosm of a macro level global community of minds interested in using this kind of the machines and computer science to better our lives. I think it's kind of an easy thing to forget when you see things like in the Western culture tell us, like the Terminator is what we kind of grew up on seeing, or what's going to happen when Skynet takes over. Right. But if you look to the east and you see Japan and you see South Korea and you see that robotics and machine intelligence is almost a deity in their culture. They look at it as reverence. So I think a happy middle ground is what we're going for, is to be skeptical by nature is healthy for us as humans. But to be accepting is truly what I think it makes us so much more useful in anything we're doing, especially with the tool, which is what this is. It's building things for hopefully not to take away jobs, not to make things have such contrast, but to actually, I think, bring us together and give more possibilities. And in education, it's a way for us to kind of level a playing field that definitely is in great need of leveling. Not to be disparaging, but to be hopeful and be optimistic that if you have a teacher who can have the support and the aid of actually individually analyzing where students are, maybe just even with and I know that this, again, whole constant that we have gone through the ethics and made all of these things possible for the bias to be kind of skewed out of all of these things that we're building. But if a student comes in and we're doing other things because we have 1 to 2 adults in the room, with these machines help, we can set up things to look for facial recognition, to show when somebody's really feeling like maybe depressed or feeling like uneasy or anxious, and that can kind of cue in to how these things could operate within the classroom from a teacher perspective. And then having students actually building these tools. So as they're designing them, they're seeing that the betterment's happening with their own hands and their own minds, collaboratively working together to make, their community better, which the outreach then grows and grows, exponentially with machines. And that's kind of where artificial intelligence for me is really the catapult for empathy. And computer science, I do have a master's degree in computer science and a master's degree in education, and kind of blending of those worlds is where I've kind of found myself. And I see these things as they're teachable machines. And I see that we can learn a lot from how something like a machine learns. And I think that goes a long way in how we can represent to students why education is important, why learning is important to us. And that doesn't just go for students. I think that goes for a commonality we all share. We've all been in the classroom or been in a setting and we ask, why am I learning this? Well, now when it really applies to your direct contact of that knowledge base you're learning, I think it gives a lot more relevance to like what you are doing in a classroom.
Right. So at North County, how do we use
Right.
AI within our curriculum at North County High School?
So we've created a few, we have a STEM program with 5 pathways, and each one of these pathways with earth-space systems, green tech, engineering, computer science, we really, and nanotechnology, we've really looked at something like AI, augmented reality. I'm calling it spatial computing. It's taken the 2D worlds of thinking and putting that into a 3D kind of modeling. And so we're using that in a 2 quarter semester classes that we've written with my team, so that we can bring some of these tools using a platform like Unity, which is a 3D platform. We're trying to expose the students to see things that they can, want to design, but without the funding of millions of dollars to get to this R&D factory that, we aren't there yet. Soon enough, we'll be somewhere around that place because it will scale down in the correct price and ease. But right now, this is a way for them to really take on that role of a data scientist and visualize the data, for them to be the game designer and the creators. And so we're trying to find an interest that some student has and really be able to push into that world with a 3D representation of that model, of that platform, and giving them the tools like Unity. I'll mention that this is a great company that we have worked with for the past 3 years to really kind of push the envelope with K through 12, and it gives students and allows students to have kind of a creative endeavor that gives them a sense of both the ethics behind design, but as well as the abilities, the developer skills, and it's really for them to create a teachable machine. So one of the things I could give an example of was one of their junior year, they have to take a class, which is a community challenge course, and using these tools, including 3D printing, so the 3D representation happening in Unity, and then taking that object and allowing that to then grow into something usable, brings ideas to the students. And one was for adaptive swimming, to give students who otherwise are not mobile, on land, the ability to have something that could then garner their own abilities and their own confidence, their own esteem to grow when they went swimming. So working with the aquatics club in Annapolis, a team of students developed, prototyped, and developed and deployed an apparatus to help take that role of somebody else having to be there, but a machine being able to help somebody swim. And there's something to be seen in that. And the same kind of thing happened with adaptive bikes that we worked with a few different organizations in the surrounding area. The students developed these, prototyped them, and then through 3D printing, we're able to make adaptive bikes fitting kids' needs who otherwise wouldn't be able to ride a bicycle by themselves. And so these moments of I think empowerment are really what we all stand for.
Talk about the research that we did a few years ago.
Oh, sure.
That was scientific research, a scientific breakthrough that we use AI to do, a scientific breakthrough that is now being used among doctors now.
Yeah, so we have the ability to have kind of telemedicine. Of course, during COVID, we've all seen the ramping up of all of this for many reasons during a global pandemic. But prior to that, we using telemedicine to actually allow students to visit surgical wards and surgical rooms. From that standpoint of hands-on learning again, where they're getting to have this kind of exposure to what even 10 years ago could have never happened. And showing that, working with, people in Anne Arundel County Medical Center, it really did kind of push the envelope of what's possible. And working with Hopkins and AAC, MC, with students kind of being, leaders in a way, because they have that technological background from our program, where they're actually kind of infusing things that we've been doing and researching with the medical field, and bringing kind of this blending, which I always think is what one of the best pieces of technology is. It brings leaders to our young people and allows them to be part of a conversation much sooner, because they've had this experience, many years prior to doctors and PhD researchers, because they're having these tools from 8th, 9th, 10th grade, and after those kind of 2 or 3 years of experience, can really bring solutions to a conversation. So that was one of the areas that really, with medicine in our BEMA program, we work to use this platform to help.
So students. AI is not a bad thing.
No.
Let's talk about, because some people are skeptic about it, the artificial intelligence and the augmented reality. Right. So talk to us about, why it's not a bad thing.
Totally understandable. And I preface it with what I said. I reiterate the fact that I think skepticism is human nature. When we're thinking about survival, it's good to be skeptical at first. It keeps you safe. But I think we've gotten to a place now where sometimes that can kind of pervert our thinking, and kind of blurs a line that we do need clearing up. And one of the things I always tell the students is, and we always go back to show, is the progression of anything, the history of something. Like it took a kernel of other humans working for reasons to get to some next step, next level. And it usually came from a place of wanting to, better an existence, better the surroundings of whether it was creating a well to get water, whether it was creating a light bulb so we could see. I mean, these are all, if you think about it, machine learning. Like these are things that we have taken as tools and provided ourselves a better possibility of doing things because of those solutions. So AI to me is the next step in this, where we're learning that this is actually also something that, it can be a benefit to us, whether it's somebody who maybe is immobile or somebody who doesn't have the ability to see, through these machines that now enable them to either walk with an exoskeleton that can be built. So it's almost a neural pathway that's extensions of the brain to body parts that otherwise wouldn't be movable. There are also the infusion of self-driving cars, these things that make, on maybe the offset, like you said, taking the hands off the wheel the first time, you might be a little hesitant. But when you think about the research that shows 1.3 million avoidable deaths each year in our country with car accidents, to me, I enjoy driving. I really do. But if I start to look at the research and see the numbers and understanding that that's safer because of the machine learning that we're imparting on all of these different kind of avenues of our lives, including, vehicles, I think we can start to see how it's not about taking away something, but it's kind of adding to things. I think we need to think of it that way. It's an additive more than it is some sort of detractor for our evolutionary, next steps.
William, I'd like to ask you a question, if that's okay.
Please.
Well, what I've been seeing is some of the good things, but I also see some of the biased things. And one of the things I know is that non-white faces aren't really recognized with facial recognition. Do you know how they're starting to abate some of those problems? Because what we know is that until now, there aren't a lot of people of color that are in AI. So are you working, or have you been able to work on teams that are working on some of those things? Because I know that you work at the high school level, but I know that you're working with a big company. So can you address that for us, please?
Definitely. It's a great question. And I bring up one of my colleagues, Ms. Jessica Ann, and some of the work she's been doing with specifically MIT and AI ethics in education. And that's directly at the heart of the research, is to show that this bias exists. So acknowledgement one, and taking that to bring in, the kind of, I would say the big paradigm shift that's happened is now design in many ways looks at the, ethics and looks at the bias as a focal point from the very start. And I think that in line with the security measures that are being taken to try and eliminate bias, because at the same time with what you just said, it's so true. If we went down the wrong path, that would be replicatable, and that could be a negative thing with machines and the processing power and how quickly they can, evolve to this other kind of mindset. But I think we are having that conversation even tonight, And I think it's continuing to happen in Google and you know, the many top 9 you know, stock, you know, companies right now. When you think about Facebook, you think about Instagram, you know, Google, you've got Microsoft. I think a lot of the times, you know, with Northrop Grumman, we're working with Lockheed Martin. These companies are recognizing that and not to, you know, take anything more than to say, like, this is something that we have to talk about, discuss, and the design now has to be involved from the very beginning of how we do make this realization not just something we understand and we're aware of, but we eliminate. And I know that I'm trying to think of the Google book that was just out a few years ago that I've read about, you know, talking specifically about this. And in fact, you know, there's been a lot in the news about how that person no longer works at Google and because of the book. But the ideas that were shared, I think, really kind of ring home to how in education, starting with younger kids, these conversations really propel us. You know, takes a long time, right? I mean, it's generational. So that's why I see it as an educational kind of focus for us to really have these conversations also now and push that envelope. Just like I was saying before, how we can now bring students to be leaders in these conversations. We can show them that this is what is happening, working with professionals who do also recognize that and kind of really build, I think, a voice with much more strength using tools like the internet to get that to be heard. And I think that's something that MIT is really working with teachers around the country, including colleagues at North County, specifically on this point about really bringing AI ethics to education from the beginning. And I was going to drop a link in there so you can kind of see what the curriculum is. I know that we can only see the you know, chat during this, but it's something that maybe, you know, we can talk about more and share out more, because this is really at the root of what you know, we're trying to work on, is to make sure that we're recognizing all the implications that could be a negative path in artificial intelligence, especially.
Well, and so while we're talking about artificial intelligence, and you brought up autonomous cars. Mm-hmm. Now, I drove commercially for 25 years before I got into IT. And while I love the fact, I love to drive. I mean, this is my first love. It was one of the things that got me out of small town Mississippi. But my fear is, or not even fear, more concern, is that the people that are doing, or the teams that are on AI, aren't really on the roads enough to make it suitable right now. I see it for the future, but not right now. I used to teach driving. And what I know is there's some, as we say, some things that are off the grid that machines can't pick up yet. It's like, for example, RTOS, the Roomba. For some houses, it works well. For other houses, it does not. So we have a road structure that isn't totally uniform. So we have to work on how those things will go when we talk about autonomous driving, and we haven't gotten there yet. Actually, autonomous driving has had some of its pitfalls. I'm looking forward to it because eventually I'm going to be at the age where driving is not going to be for me. But right now, where do you see us, and how long do you think it'll be before we get there with autonomous cars?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I definitely do see what you're saying as one of the things that you think about with design, right? And especially with your experience. You talk to people who have been driving for decades, like you have. And a lot of companies are starting to, I think, you know, have user stories that really build in what you're asking for, which is to have, you know, the ability to have more control over the uncontrollable, which for most of the things, I mean, you mentioned about the robotic vacuum cleaner and how houses, you know, might not all be the same layout. I have three boys, and one of the ages 10 to 3. And one of the things we talk about often about, you know, the same question when I answer it and we discuss it is what jobs, you know, may be hard to replicate. And I say the more controlled environment something is, the more replicatable it is, given this kind of technology. So roads, highways are great, right? Very straight, very long, not many things. Occasionally, maybe some, you know, road, you know, hiccup is there, but for the most part, it's nice and easy. When you get to the city, right, all bets are off. There's a lot of things going on, but there's a grid there still. I mean, there's city planning. So I think when we look at truly the things and areas that we still need to grow in. I think it is recognition of what is around us, and certain systems like LiDAR systems, which we've been using for decades, as you know, in transportation,
Yes.
really have the ability. What it is a 3D motion camera that's really taking many cameras taking pictures, seconds and seconds and seconds of everything around them. And with that ability to then have recognition, which one of the things we do in our class is we teach the kids. I don't know how many people have watched the movie Clueless. I'm not giving a shout out to it, but in the movie, the protagonist goes to her wardrobe and she's got an AI kind of closet, and it shows her outfits before she puts them on. And so one of the projects they first do is we show them how to scale something like that nowadays, where back then in the 90s, you were thinking, oh, look at that famous, person would have a closet like that. Well, in about an hour, we can teach a machine now to really recognize the difference between a shirt, a pair of pants, a pair of socks, and, they can see how badly I dress when they get to see the wardrobe at home. The idea really does allow for them to see how, oh, okay, I can see the difference between a person or a car. I can see the difference between a stoplight or a crosswalk, and it really gives them more of a sense of how this actually works. And it's nothing magical. It's just a lot of processing power that we have now, and the ability to capture that in a memory that can retrieve it very quickly too. So driving, you need it to be done very quickly. And there's a lot of interesting things happening, like you said, especially on the front lines of the import-export system, which makes up roughly 60 to 70%, I think, of our economy in this country alone. So that's a big deal when we talk about making sure that those things are in place for safety, for security, and you're right, people need to be in the car with the machines as they're learning. So I think that's happening also.
Well, while that's all true and very poignant, let's think about some other things, because you mentioned empathy, and I think that's really important. Machines don't have empathy. That's the problem, and concerned where machines don't have empathy. How are the teams getting together with people so that they can bring that in and tie that in? Because, for example, I was on with Xfinity today. I upgraded my internet. I bought my own modem and put my own wireless in. But there was a problem with my billing, and I always pay in advance. Well, I changed my package back about a year ago, but it expired. And they were like, well, you have a past due. And I said, there's no way, I've already paid, so and so and so. But the automated system would not let me speak to an agent, no matter how much I tried. So I ended up having to engage online and finally get someone to call me back. And we did get it squared away. But machines only think in one way when they're programmed to do so. And so how do we bring the empathy into it is my question.
I think what we're doing is how we do that, right? The discussions about this, the reality of how we have this design process involve collaboration with people who will be the users of said systems. I think that's happening much more in a more nuanced way than ever before. And part of that is with the ability, like you said, to have hardware that you can hook up yourself at home, and just a phone call away, you can have the World Wide Web at your fingertips. I mean, we really have come so far from even 1990 when, Sir Berners-Lee is at, the computer terminal wanting to share documents with someone else in CERN in Europe. And he just decides, well, what if I attach this kind of addressability to then open up this network within the network we're on? And you've got the beginning of the www, world we're in now. And so the sense that I see it as is like the conversations have to take place, which they can much more readily, and with a greater diversity of people that need to be a part of the conversation, as well as the ability for us to have, I think, test beds where we're seeing how things are working, and we're giving, this open source kind of, it was mentioned earlier, somebody talked about wanting to get their drone license. And I feel like now we have this kind of consumerism at such a place where so many more people can reach kind of this interest level. And then that can really spark and I think motivate us to have better designed, less biased machines that we're all operating, because we do see the benefit of them. And I think in real terms, kind of what you're hinting at is like, we don't want to put the, brakes, pardon the pun about the driving, but we don't want to stop, I think, the road we're on, which is to kind of make lives better with these machines and this capability. But we also don't want to disregard, life completely and just think that this is the only thing that matters. So I don't think we should fear any of this. I think we should continue having conversations about this, because I've always found that open dialogue and transparency in design, that's, why I'm in education. I mean, I've done other things, throughout my career that did garner more money, but didn't garner the same kind of relationship, I think, to the world I want to live in. So there is a concept to that's all of this revolves around for me, which is like the discussions, the collaboration. We build better things together. And I know it's kind of, tug in cheek nowadays to say, but we are better together. And I think the more that we do operate under that guise of like, I can learn from your experience to build something better for your life as a software engineer, that makes me a better software engineer. And I think that wasn't happening before. I think it was always a race to be first. And that meant we were the sexiest, we got the most money, and now we'll figure it out now, or the lawyers will. And I think, and no, I have many lawyers in my family, so I'm not disparaging anyone. What I'm trying to say is that everyone played their role. But I think now the design really is, well, who are they going to be using this? Is this even something that people need? Is this something that's going to actually be welcomed? And I think that consumer base is what I was getting at, is we have such access to these tools now, and it's such a price point that many can enter the market, that the competition, I think, drives collaboration. And I get to buy more as an informed consumer. And if I like how this thing was created, I'll support that. I mean, you see it with Kickstarter, you see it with many of these other kind of ways that people are developing things. And I think that's the mindset of the culture we're in now. It's not these novel ideas that are so revolutionary. I think that they're just coming upon us at a time with the technology to blend together to make more connections happen much faster, which is a better thing when these conversations revolve around how we make better, more, reliable, less biased technology that won't, sneak in and, take away our jobs or do something that, we didn't have the intention of because we weren't thinking about that in the design of.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you for coming in, Dr. Jefferson, and I want to thank Principal Jefferson for bringing William in, because we needed to hear from this perspective. Our topic tonight is the new world of artificial technology. We're watching the PIC TV network news right now, and we want to thank you again, those who are watching us from all over the world. Thank you for coming in. And we want to also take a commercial break, and we're going to come back right after this. And we want to hear from our audience. We have a virtual audience. We have William Taylor from South Carolina. We have Patricia. She's on. We want to hear also from Elaine Austin from the Dream Television Network. And I got a couple of questions too. I want to also bring in again Michelle Cox, who is our public relations person from the PIC TV network, because she works with AI. She did our part one, and I want you and William, you and Michelle Cox to come on and answer some questions, because I want to get into some deep things that I got and that I want to talk about this. And we're going to get into some more of our artificial technology subject today. You're watching the PIC TV network. Everybody, we're going to come right back after this commercial break. Don't touch that dial.
We've all been hurt at some point, even abandoned. Many of us have done the hurting ourselves. We get to the point where we don't trust anyone, nor do we feel worthy of being loved by anyone. Then there's that one person who just doesn't give up on loving you. Their love is unconditional. Their love stays long enough for you to heal. And then they promise to never leave. That's love you can count on. God's love.
Everybody for watching our PIC TV Network news segment tonight. We're so happy to have our special presenters on tonight. We have Principal Jefferson on tonight from Baltimore, and he's on several of our news segments. And he brought on one of the teachers who are teachers in AI. And also, we're so happy to have Michelle Cox. She is from Atlanta, Georgia. She's the public relations person. This is her field. I have a couple of questions, and I want our panel to jump on with me. You know, it was a wonderful information and education that you stated, Teacher Williams, on artificial technology and where we are. But there are also some dark sides. You know, there's some good, bad, and ugly in the hands of the wrong people. I watched two movies on Netflix. The first one was The Great Hacker. The second one was The Social Dilemma. And both of those documentaries, they talked about the internet and the founders of Google, the founder of Facebook, and how the same founders don't even want their children to watch it now. We talked about The Great Hacker. In that documentary, it talked about how the election was hacked. And it was so sad to me that I watched this and I studied it twice. And I had to go back to the first election from President Obama and the second selection from Donald Trump, and to see some of the same people who worked on Obama's team who helped him to get in through the election process, work with the Trump team to help him to get in through the election process, and how a lot of things was hacked. Could you talk about that, Teacher Williams, and also Michelle Cox, and those who are in the audience who may want to jump in? Because I fear where we are. I really think it's out of control. I'm a former teacher at Marietta Charter High School and Howard's University Sociology Religion. And it scares me. It really scares me to the point where everything is traced from the time that we get up to the time that we sit down, how many times we touch this device, what it has all of our data in it. When we use our credit cards at the store, we're being tracked. Everything is being traced. You know, it's to me, and maybe you can throw some more light on it. I know there's some good out there, but there's also some bad. I want to start with Michelle Cox, and I'll hear from our Professor Williams. Come on, Michelle.
Well, let's think about it, because one of my favorite movies is Bicentennial Man. And then I have another couple of favorites. But sometimes the tracking can be bad. My accounts got hacked when they hacked Experian, when they hacked the Social Security Administration. But you're always going to have people that have nefarious activities. We're always going to have that fight between good and evil. That's just how it is. The thing about it is there are some things that you can do to protect yourself. Number one, cut your phone off when you don't need to use it. Cut your computer off when you don't need to use it. Harder for people to hack you if you don't have it on. Now, let's talk about Alexa technology. Alexa records what you say, but for everyone that doesn't know it, you can tell Alexa to delete your conversations. This is one of the ways to help keep you safe. Also, I broke my hip. If I had not have had my phone on me, I couldn't have called anybody to come and help me get up off the ground or call an ambulance. So while there is a modicum of where we are losing some privacy, but we're also gaining some safety. So you have to have a balance, but the balance comes from us. Dr. Evans, I yield the floor. William, your turn.
I think it's again part of the discussion that really is important is what's the transparency companies are willing to give us to use their products. I think if we had more of a choice, which this is one of the hearts of my focus has been computer security for many years, and one of the things I'm always wishing we could do better is to give people a clearer picture of what their data, and how it's being used, what data is being actually captured and how it's being used. And it's not so much the capturing of the data, it's more so the unintended consequences of the data. So like, let's say for instance, Google Maps, right? It's wonderful because you can get a lot of places in a very efficient way. You can find the cheapest gas prices with Waze in the car. I mean, there's a lot of things that are building the infrastructure for our roads to be autonomous with vehicles that do drive safer and create less, possibility of an accident. But the unintended consequences of the surveillance capitalism, which is what it is called, is that I'm driving to this certain place every time, Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Well, without you telling me, I now know where you work. And now you're driving to this place at 5 to 6 o'clock every day. And then on the weekends, you're here. And again, there's privilege to say you're there in the weekends, not having to work, 2 or 3 jobs. But now we know where you live without telling us. So these unintended consequences are things that they can use as predatory practices, to send you different ads and try to make you, kind of succumb to those ads. And that's a piece of the practice that I don't appreciate, because we have to also think, though, and I think Michelle said it so well, we have to be active in our own pursuit of our own safety too. Maybe you don't use the map except for when you are in the car, and then you turn off your location on your phone. I know it's not easy because you're thinking, oh gosh, if I turn that off, then I got to turn it back on. But again, that's one of those pieces, like turn off the location, turn off your Bluetooth. I think if you don't have that signal being sent out, people can't connect to it because it's not available. But that goes back to us as consumers to say, where's my data going? And really stepping up and asking that question of companies, because I'm a big proponent of that. And we have the kids doing that and making sure that they are speaking up for their own digital, basically digital bill of rights is what we want to create. Having this sense of like this digital citizenship is going to take us saying that you need to change, because if I'm a $1 billion company and I'm an advertising company, certainty is what I want. I want to know when you're going to buy something, what you're going to buy. And that's certainty. And that's what they're paying for. And that's what they're actually tracking. I think it's less about something nefarious as it is about consumers' dollars. So as consumers ourselves, we should say, look, if we're going to be a part of your, company and transaction, then give me my data, give me my choice. And if you're selling my data, I should, one, agree to that. And then two, I should be the one also making money from that.
I think you and Ms. Cox is 100% right, on where we are today. The thing that makes me a little nervous is the fact that, and I want our audience to come in too. Patricia, you can jump in. And also I wanted Elaine and also Walter to jump in too. Where we are today is a brand new world. The new world of artificial intelligence is it's a scary place because of the fact, look at not just the good, but the bad. I mean, I'll go back to the election. The election, and go back to the events that happened. The Black Lives Matter. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how a buttons was pushed. You would think you was going to a Black Lives Matter site, and it was going to a different place in Russia. Let's talk about how it was set up with the fake news or the subliminal message that was put out there that was making us to come against each other. Even the riot that happened down at the Capitol. All of that was a part of social media. All that was a part of a scheme. It was all a part of somebody behind a system who was in control of some devices that made this thing happen. Cox, come on and talk for a minute, because I'm getting heated up.
All right. Well, let's talk about that part. Remember, unless we are proactive in what we do, especially in computers, then we have a reason to have concern. But at the end of the day, it can hurt or help. My thing is with any type of technology, we have to do our due diligence. I've been in IT for a long time. I love technology. I know what it can do. But we have so many people that rely on technology blindly. And that's not something that we can do. We have to be conscious about our use. We have to be conscious about the information that's out there about us. And we have to do our due diligence. Now, as far as voting and machines and hacking, you have to remember there are always going to be people that want their way. There are always going to be people in power that think they should stay in power. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. So as people, as we have these conversations and we work together, we can stem the tide of this. Are some bad actors out there? Absolutely. Have some bad things happen? Absolutely. But as we become more knowledgeable, we can help each other stem the tide of these things and make this for our greater good. William, what do you have to say on that?
Well, I was going to say this: we can't be afraid of it. We have to embrace it. And I think when you talk about I'm fearing this, and what about this, what about that, they're going to show you all the negative. They're not going to show you the good. I guarantee you there's more good that's being done with technology and AI and AR than what is being said bad. And we, and I know the baby boomers, they don't want to hear about technology. Generation X, Z's, millennials, we embrace it. And I think the more you embrace it and the more information you have about it, the more, like Bill said, you can have a better decision. I think you always going to have people who are going to hide the truth. It's always going to be like that. Naturally, spiritually, the whole nine. Yes, we can watch the social media dilemma. We can say Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want his kids using Facebook, and the guy from the executive from Google. But you remember, all of them got paid to make that movie too. So we have to be careful as to who we listen to all of the time, because if somebody gave me $1 million and I'm a disgruntled, Google X employee, somebody gave me a couple $1 million to talk about Google in a bad way, I'm probably going to do it. So we have to be careful about the information that we are receiving, but we cannot be afraid of the technology. We have to embrace it, and that's where the empathy comes in, and that's where people like Bill and Dr. Campbell and all of us that are on this call, we have to find people that are going to be ethically and morally right using the technology.
That gave me something to think about. They was paid for the movie. I never thought about they was paid to make the movie.
Those guys are paid. Those guys are paid to make those movies. So if you, Dr. Evans, if you came and told me, if you gave me, $5 million, because I'm a disgruntled Anne Arundel County public school person, and we're doing a documentary on the racism in Anne Arundel County public school, and you say, Eric, we'll throw you $500,000 to do the documentary, I'm probably going to say what you want me to say. So we have to be careful about the information that plays forth, because all of them were top executives who either quit or lost their job, but at the end of the day, they were disgruntled.
Yeah, Patricia, I want you to come in. Patricia, come on, I want to hear from you.
Well, it's funny that you're talking about that movie, because I always thought, well, yes, somebody's benefiting from starring in the movie, but I did believe that their message was to educate. And, you at the end of the day, you make your own judgment. It's really at the end of the day, you have to decide, well, where are these resources coming from? But I did believe that it was beneficial. I really was talking to my husband about it, that, just like when you're in 5th or 6th grade, you learn about the birds and the bees, that's mandatory. Well, you know what? I think a movie like that, it doesn't have to be that one necessarily, but along those lines, it should be mandatory at that age, because, a lot of kids did take their life. A lot of kids did get impacted, and you got those people, again, like, you want to believe what you want to believe, but come on. The Trade Center did go down. There are people that, again, I don't want to get into it with the world is flat, but, it does explain in that movie why certain people believe certain things, because AI, that's the thing. It's not human. So it doesn't know the difference between real and not real. And it explains that very clearly in the movie. And I thought that was very important to get that education out to the world. And I really believe like everybody should watch it just to really, make your own decision at the end of the day. I'm not saying to get brainwashed by it, because again, like you said, somebody is benefiting from it for whatever reason. But I did believe it had more wellness to promote than, alter motives. And I do believe it's very important to educate, and the same with AI. I feel like along with learning, like you hear AI and you hear, oh my God, technology, I don't know anything about it. But again, like just like she made that kids book, you start one step at a time, and 101, AI 101, and the basics, I mean, just think of even getting a stent for your heart. That was AI. That was in the early 90s. But imagine the world without AI. It has so much more value. And again, it's up to us to decide how we use it. And I'm done speaking.
I think that's great. I think I'm along with you guys on the good. I'm 100% with it. I use my phone every day. Matter of fact, we use this method of technology to reach people around the world right now. I think that's a wonderful thing, that we can go to the doctor and they can scan our body, and we can find out where the cancer is, or do robotic surgery, laser surgeries, cyber knife. Technology is a great blessing in our lifetime. But I don't want us to be just like the George Floyd situation verdict, to be so jumping overwhelmed to realize that your phone can spy on you. That you don't know when you swipe your credit card. Why is it we got face identity now on everything? Why is it that everybody has to have a password and email before you get into everything? Why so much data is more richer than all the oil in the earth?
Well, Dr. Evans, we got to realize too, not just coming from a natural standpoint, but from a biblical standpoint. The Bible says the information will increase from a biblical standpoint, which will be the signs of the time. So we're asking all of these questions as to why this, why that, why this. We may have to ask the question, why not? Especially if we're the church that was looking for the coming of the second coming of Jesus. This has to happen. So why are we afraid of it when that's what we've been preaching for the last 2,000 years, that Jesus is coming back, the second coming of Jesus? And biblically they said this was going to happen. So why are we afraid of something that we've been asking for 2,000 years? That I just want to pose that question.
I just want to interject also. Could you imagine the George Floyd without AI? If somebody did not have a phone, imagine that. What would have? Well, it was terrible how it played out, but it made a movement. And it made history. And, that's all because somebody decided to film that and catch it on tape. And that's because of AI. So, yes.
Yeah.
And I'm in agreement. I'm in agreement with everybody on here. I want to come in with Brother Taylor for a second. I'm in agreement. I'm a lover of technology. That's what I do. This is why we have the PIC TV network broadcast. But I want us to see a bigger picture. I embrace all the good that we're talking about tonight, and I think that's another level of appreciation from where we are. But I want us to also not to be afraid, Principal Jefferson, but to be aware. We living in the 21st century. COVID-19 is here. And where we are today is a great day to live in, but we still have to be sensitive to our information. And I wanted put Bob to come back in for a minute, Bill to come back in for a minute. Everybody in the whole world, why is it that data is the #1 resource on the planet Earth right now? Why is the data is richer than oil?
It is the new gold. And, when you can see things like the NFTs that are happening now, where you can have your LeBron James slam dunk that he's recorded just for you to buy. And that's going for thousands of dollars. Now he's giving it to charity, which is great. But this kind of is spurring a whole new concept of commerce to me. And I don't think I want to shy away from that. I think I want to kind of push into that and lean into that, because I think what it does is it drives down the ability for us to, hoard everything. I mean, Jeff Bezos, there's great examples of people who have so much and could do so much for the world. Now, not saying they're doing something right or wrong by choosing not to do something, but it's really hard when you see how much more money they made during something like a global pandemic, and how little they had to give in return for that. I mean, we were all stuck in our homes, and to get anything, you had to use kind of the online services because you couldn't go anywhere. And instead of making, I think, us, as consumers right now, we don't have as much choice, but I think we're leading to a place where we do have choice. I mean, if you guys, and ladies, if we look at phones right now, there are a lot of phones that are coming out with the ability to not be tracked. And I think these kinds of consumer choices are what we're asking for. And that's what's going to be starting to be built. And I'm with you. Don't believe that YouTube has your best interest. Go on for your one video while you're cleaning the house or something, and get off after you hear the music you like, because they are an advertising firm. They want you to stay on as much as they can. And that means fear is what drives us and motivates us, as humanistic kind of approach to having you kind of feel like I have to know what's going to happen. It's fear that's kind of pursuing that. And I know that a lot of that is what the social dilemma talks about, is that those are the intended human intention to get you to stay on something, so you can have advertisements, so you can be, in somehow the kind of funnel for opening that, digital wallet. And that's really the nefarious piece. You're right. The machines aren't thinking in that way consciously. It's us consciously as an advertising company. If I'm a software engineer at Google, at YouTube, they're the same company, Alphabet. I mean, it's one company. I want you to stay on. I don't want you to go anywhere else. So I want to give you everything you need. And that's what the scary part for me is, and not in a negative way, but just like, let's again stop for a second and think. We've unleashed the contracts with Google. Google Chromebooks are in every classroom. Roughly 80% of at least the mid-Atlantic classrooms have Google Chromebooks. So they see Google from age 5 to 18 now as part of their education. So that's a big deal to me, in terms of, yes, the reachability, the easeability, closing gaps for learning. But at the same time, I think we need to demand more from Google, from Alphabet, and to say, you don't get their data, because that's the piece that I'm worried about, is like that filing away of what before they're, 13, they can't have an email, with things like FERPA and SIPA and the different governing laws that are both state and federal for keeping children safe online. But by the time they're 18, all of that goes out the window. And now they have these files and these categories of who they are, supposedly. So to me, that's something we need to talk about. And I think that happens through this discussion, that we do make a better design, and we don't let advertising companies be involved with schools in that way, at least without recognizing that that's what that is. They're not a technology company to me. Google is Alphabet. They're an advertising firm that has a lot of smart engineers that can build these tools for usability and functionality that people like to use. I mean, right now I'm on Chrome, And if I'm signed into Chrome, Chrome knows I'm on PIC TV tonight, and Chrome knows who's here with me. And so now we're all connected as a digital tribe in some category, that they are looking at. And by the way, I'd like to say, being the only white male is terrific. I feel like I should just turn off my camera so nobody sees that I'm white. I don't want to. I mean, this is the prolonging of how the algorithm is going to make it, like we talked about, if we're not careful and conscious, make these kinds of, decisions for us, not because we really want that, but that's what they think we want. And again, that's kind of subverting the pieces to what we've all talked about tonight, is we should have more choice. Because sometimes you have to think, when you're on anything, for music, for movies, whatever it is, are you really choosing? Like, when does this choice stop, right? How many movies do you watch before it's like, do I really even like this? Why is this the thing they think I want to watch? So then your tastes almost are being picked for you. And then maybe your taste isn't yours at all anymore. So I am not saying that it's all perfect, but I'm definitely saying that the things we talk about for healthcare, for numerous, reasons, it's a godsend. Like, if you are, handicapped and unable to, get up and you need help, a phone can be a lifesaver. An accelerometer, every time you move this thing, the XYZ axis, it knows you're moving. That accelerometer in that is how you use maps, but at the same time, it would know if you fall or if you don't fall. So you don't even have to call. It could notify someone for help for you because it knows you've fallen. So these are those kinds of ways of, I think, yes, we have to take the good with the bad. And I think overall, I'm really glad that we have indoor plumbing. I'm really glad we have, electricity. So I'm going to keep saying that as long as the intent behind it isn't for me to become something you want me to be or feel less than or intolerant of, or somehow, somebody I don't want to be, then it might be a benefit for me. But that's where we have to be proactive. And we have to say, what's the company's intent? Is it to sell me something? Because maybe I should be a little bit more leery about hanging out in this platform for too long. I think that's a summary of what I think we're all talking about. Just be conscious that, the intent and who's doing that to you before you agree to it.
That was great. I enjoyed that. That was very professional. Those who are watching right now, you're watching the PIC TV network. We're talking about a powerful hot topic, part 3, on a new world of artificial intelligence. We're talking to some experts in the field. We have Principal Eric Jefferson from Baltimore. We have Bob, who is also a teacher in AI. We have Patricia on, representing our Spanish community and also Clubhouse. We have Michelle Cox on. She is our public relations person from Atlanta, Georgia. We have Elaine Austin, who's on with us. She's from the Census Bureau. She's going to come and talk about some information on AI. And I am your host today, Dr. David Evans, your president of the PIC TV network. We're going to come back right after this commercial, so don't touch that dial. We're excited for you watching with us on today. Hey, I want to thank you again for tuning in with us on our PIC TV Network News. We're getting ready to go into the last segment of our presentation tonight, and we've been so, informed, enlightened, and with these great presenters on. We're talking about the hottest subject on the planet, and what is that? That is artificial intelligence, AI. Those who've never heard of it, now you do. You're hearing from some people who work in the field. We're in the day of change. I want to go all the way to South Carolina and bring in Walter Taylor, who's been on. When you see AI, Walter, how do you feel about where we are, and how do you feel about this presentation tonight?
Well, thanks for having me here, Dr. Evans. When I think of AI, honestly, first thing that comes to mind, I was a young man, was a man by the name of Ross Perot, and for some reason it stuck with me. I remember when he ran for president, he made this statement, and it was that information would be the #1 product of the future. And this is way, I don't know, 30 some odd years ago, but he was definitely on point with what he said as far as information is concerned. It is a #1 commodity of today. It's the #1, I would say, consumed commodity. That's why Facebook, that's why Instagram, that's why Google, you name the companies, Twitter, Snapchat, all these companies, people are just consuming information and saying it's really become, I would say, not gonna you term, but it's very addictive. Information is addictive. How many likes you get online is addictive. How many people commented back to your what you said for the day? It can be very addictive. Now, with technology is concerned, I will say this: I had a conversation coincidentally with someone today. I do have a background in cybersecurity that made a statement, and it's just stuck with me today. She said, "We will either evolve or we will dissolve." So if you do not evolve with technology and what's going on, and just even protecting your own, protect yourself, know where you're going. If you're not using your phone, shut it off sometimes. And but it's very true. If we do not evolve with technology, and you can dissolve. But I do thank God for it. It's the reason why my mom can get here GPS without getting lost now. Before she would have to make at least 2 stops on the way. So I love technology.
It's here. It's the hot.
This is Walter. I'm done
speaking. It's blessed. I want you to come back, Walter. It's a blessing to be alive, man, to see this day and time, and to embrace this.
Yes.
I've been keeping social media for 20 years. I'm the president also of the Social Media Training Center. That's what we do. There's this whole lost generation of people who don't understand Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, LiveMe, Periscope, and others that are out there. And we're not the only one in the US that have these apps. There's other countries that have other apps too that they use. When we have these discussions like this, it brings us to a whole new world of learning and technology. Elaine Austin, who's on,
Yes,
she's
sir.
also from the Dreams Television Network. She's also one of our co-founders of the PIC TV Network, and also she works at the Census Bureau. Elaine, when you look at technology today, you have been working in the field for a long time in the government, and people around the world you have connected with. So Elaine, talk about the changes, even with the situation going on with COVID-19, working at home, how it is an advantage. Also, you being also the president of the new generation who hires people to get summer jobs. Talk about technology, Elaine, and how you feel it's some of the good or some of the bad.
I love technology, I think, but we definitely have to have technology, and it's so beneficial, especially at this time for our children, because we can continue to have classes at home, doing Zoom, and people who are in the hospital that we can't go to visit, we can see them, and people who are in other cities that we love, we can't go to see them. Without technology, we would not be able to communicate with them. We would not be able to communicate to find out what the weather is going to be for tomorrow, or I just love technology. That's all I can say, that we have to embrace it. And also, I think that we all should remember not only just to depend on technology for as far as how to get somewhere, how to go back and forth. Never go the same way twice. My father has always told me, always take a different route every day. That's not only for technology, for people who actually see you coming and going. That's very good for that. But I just love it and I embrace it.
The world has changed. We have to go with the changes of the world today. And I'm excited for all of you who are on today, those who are watching with us. Through technology, we can reach the world, at a point of a button. I'm in Washington, D.C., and we literally, through the PIC TV network, can go to Brazil, France, Argentina without getting a ticket, without getting a plane, without getting a hotel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we can reach people from our location to their location. Where would we be without this great moment in technology? But we have to have a balance. We have to also be aware of the changes that's taking place in our world that's here. Coach Teacher Williams, before we close tonight, and I want to Michelle Cox to come on and talk a little bit. Being with students today in your class, teaching the next generation, will we ever go back to the world that we known before? Will we ever go back? Will we ever know the world that we knew before?
Yeah, it's a very interesting, poignant question. I've enjoyed doing trail marathons, and I feel like every time I'm out there running, how appreciative I am of the world that we have come from. And I think it connects us, at least connects me, back to a time of when we lived outside, which is much more often of our species' existence than we have been in homes. But I think there's always a connector to who and what we were and what we are becoming that we do share. And I think in these moments with kids, part of that reality is now that they've had distance learning and digital learning. And I think for some people, being in a crowded school, being in hallways, being in classrooms, they don't find their voice as they have being in a much more, I think, controlled environment, like maybe their own kind of room or living room at home. And I think that's one of the pieces I hope we do keep, is that we do grow and get better with time. So if we give more choice, maybe kids can have more sleep in high school. Maybe the kids who really do need, the services that a school can provide, food, shelter, a safe place, can be what school becomes more often for the kids that need it in that way. And I think we can really be operating with technology to serve more people where they want to be and where they need to be. And that's happening, I think, in a very, it's a tough way to do it, because everyone, I think, rightly so, is feeling frustrated and sometimes feeling, anxiety still with everything going on due to COVID. But we also saw, breakthroughs with education, like I said, where we had kids who were learning and excelling and digitally. But also, I think we've learned that a lot of kids, have schools that meant a lot more than just opening a book and learning something. But it was a place, like I said, that's safe. There's food, people who are caring about them and giving them, opportunities to feel, they have security. And I think we operate under those guys now, and really find, with conversations, and technology can help with that, to meet students where they want to be, families where they want to be, and also, what best serves, the needs of all students. And I think we're getting there. And I think that's helpful. Technology is helping with that.
That's awesome. Thank you, Teacher Williams. I want to ask the same thing to Michelle Cox, you in AI, and you also in technology. This is what you've been doing over the last 25 years. Is the world that we know gone? Will we ever go back to the world that we knew before? Come on, Dr. Cox.
Well, let's think about it, and let's really be honest. Is that where we really want to be? Is that where we see ourselves? I remember Star Trek. I remember Lieutenant Uhura wearing this communications headpiece, and I was like, Wow, how cool is that? I remember Dick Tracy having the first smartwatch, and that comic was centered back in the 1950s. So the question is not so much, are we going to go back? We don't want to. Let's think about COVID-19. Because of AI and AI teams, they were able to come up with a vaccine to fight this. We're going to be opening up. Because of AI, we have teams that work on solutions to problems. Of course, there are always going to be bad actors, just like in the Bible, there have been bad actors. But I'm always looking forward because together, when we collaborate, not only will we educate and inspire, artificial intelligence can be a vehicle that we use as long as we're conscious about what's going on in our world. My thing and my challenge to everyone is make sure you know what's going on with your digital footprint. Make sure you know what your name means in society. Make sure when you represent yourself in artificial intelligence, it's that place when you look at it, you say, yes, I'm living in a digital world, but it doesn't control me. I control it. So no, we're not going back, but we can embrace a future where we can all help find solutions and make this world a better place. I'm Michelle, the Computer Lady, and that's my time.
Michelle, before we close, you said something very interesting when you was talking about the situation last segment. You stated if the president would have listened to the scientists and those who were giving advice, we could have been in a better situation. Could you explain that? And I want to Teacher William to come and back a little bit on that.
Well, you think about it. The president had briefings on his desk that came from the World Health Organization that said, hey, we see a situation in Wuhan, China. We have on good authority and what we've been doing and the people that we have there, that there's an outbreak, there's something there. Is it SARS? Is it N1H1? We know something's going on. Now, unfortunately, at the time, our predecessor president wasn't listening to the science. He was, oh, it's a hoax, or he was too busy chasing the media to listen to the science. Because had he listened to them and let the doctors and the professionals do their job and work with WHO, just like N1H1, when it came here, it could have gotten contained. Ebola came here, but how did we have an Ebola outbreak in the United States? We did not. We had people that were listening to the science, and AI helped to fund some of those teams, and they were working collaboratively. The one thing about our world is we're global now. We can reach out and touch. It's just like Mr. Williams, he's in another state, you're in another state, but we can work together collaboratively through the technology to help each other, to find solutions. And if we had have been working with our collaborative partners in China and other places, I think we could have stemmed the tide of this a lot earlier because people would have been paying attention. We've always been a world leader, but then we didn't act like one. I'm Michelle, the Computer Lady, and I yield the floor.
Teacher Williams, do you agree with that? And if you don't, talk about what you can add to it.
I do agree with the reach of technology and science now being a global collaborative measure, and what would have taken 5 years, took us less than 18 months to come up with vaccines choices. And I think that collaborative measure shows that the range we do have now in terms of, being good stewards as global leaders. Like, I think we do lead now with a footstep towards science in the direction of solutions. And I think the catapult that is, the internet and the range of communication. I mean, if we all want to talk about where we're still at, I mean, it's 2021 and we still have half of the world's population that's never been on the internet. We've roughly got about 5, maybe billion people that have been in some way connected to a device that's connected to a data stream of the internet. That's still almost half the world's population that hasn't had access to this yet. So to me, I feel like we're embracing what's going to be a revolution of our collective global communication that I hope it does resonate, that we are more similar. Like we're on a planet together right now, hurtling through space, going 67,000 miles per second, and you don't even feel it, but it's happening to us. And so that sense of, I think, how science revolutionizes the mind to create, I think, a more homeostasis experience, that we do all share something, which is the choice that we didn't have for existence, but we're all here. And I think science does revolutionize the mind to think about how pragmatically we can make this better for ourselves, and not just get rich off of it. I don't think it's about that. I think we're getting past that. And I think the more we communicate and the more we do see that we're sharing this experience together, that we do come together. And I think what Michelle was really saying was there are reasons to listen to people, and it should be because of, the background, their experience, and those should kind of speak in volumes comparatively to just someone who speaks the loudest. Because that can be the subversion of using this platform, which that's part of our ability to look past that is understanding more, being more knowledgeable ourselves, and knowing now that just because we hear something on television or the internet does not mean it's actually true or beneficial for us to actually follow and listen. So I think it gives us all much more healthy skepticism, and also then leads us to know that there is more of a truth with data, with science, and that leads to better solutions for us much sooner, especially during something like a global pandemic. We need to be able to listen to science and pragmatically make the steps that allow for that communication to be what leads us to more lives being saved. I think we're all deserving of that.
That's awesome. Hey, everybody, we're so excited for all of you who tune in tonight to our presentation on our PIC TV network. I'm so happy that we have our own PIC TV network News Now channel. And again, for those who are watching, our subject tonight has been so awesome that we are happy to tell the world about our view of the new world of artificial intelligence. There is a big conference going on right now, and that conference has an artificial technology conference with 10,000 people attending, 150 speakers, over 400 rooms, and that's going on. But we have our own tonight. They better make room for 401, because we were so educated by Teacher Williams. Awesome. We got to bring you back next week for part 4. Michelle Cox from Atlanta, Georgia, just the brains of this subject. These people work in this arena. This is what they do. And we are blessed to be able to have them on to listen and learn, and most of all, to apply. I want to thank you for your time, everybody. I want to thank you, Lion Austin, for coming in from Dreams Television Network, a co-founder of PIC TV Network. Thank you for Patricia coming on.
I have something I would like to share, a quote from Einstein, who was an expert scientist. And just to echo what everybody said, numbers don't lie. And that's just the facts of science. And here's a quote by Einstein that I just happen to have handy. And it says, "It's every man's obligation to put back into the world at least the equivalent of what he takes out of it." And that's what I got for you today. And it was great joining you guys. I look forward to seeing more of you guys. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you. Hey, we're excited for all of you who've been watching our PIC TV network, and all of you who've been on our own news channel. We'll be back on every Monday at 9:30, and we just going to be beamed around the country and around the world on our PIC TV network. I'm excited for all of you who've been watching us from Brazil, France, Argentina, Nicaragua, United Kingdom, United States, Mexico, Guatemala. You know where you at, Germany, Panama. We want to thank you for tuning in to our very own PIC TV network, beaming from our location, headquarters in the nation's capital. Hey, tell somebody to watch the PIC TV network. Happy Mother's Day to everybody out there. Happy Mother's Day week, everybody. Shalom, and we'll see you on next time. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Love, it's a word that comes and goes, but few people really know what it means to really love somebody. Love, though the tears may fade away, I'm so glad your love will stay, 'cause I love you and you show me, Jesus, what it really means, what it really means, what it really means. And I'm so glad your love is patient, kind. That's your love. Your love is patient, kind. That's your love. You've shown us patience, kindness. That's love. And you're consistent in each and every way. Your love is patient, kind. That's your love. Help us to love like you, Lord. Help us to forgive and never forget that your love, it showed itself when you died on the cross. You spread your arms wide to show us love. It was patient. You stayed there long enough to cover the sins of the world.